As we talked about before, functions are like black boxes. They don't know what exists in other functions. So now we're ready to write a function that will calculate the number of calories. And so instead of this formula being in the main function, I'm going to call a function calc calories, and I will store the returned value into the calories variable. Okay, so let's think about this. This function is going to calculate the calories using this formula, and it will return the result, and I'll store it into calories. So this function needs to know about the weight, the height, and the age. But functions don't know about each other's variables, right? So what we have to do is we have to pass a copy of that information. And so in the parentheses, I'm going to pass weight, height, and age. So this is calling the function and then giving that function information to do the calculation. And then it will take these values, apply the formula, and then return the result. So I'm going to take this, calories will be a float. So this is going to have a return type of a float. And in the parentheses in the function definition, we have to create variables that will hold these values. So these are 3 int variables, right? The weight, the height, and the age. So I have to create 3 variables here so that whatever is stored into weight will get stored into the first variable, and then height, the second variable, and then age, the third variable. So I'm going to make, and these don't have to be called the same thing. I can call that W. I can call it whatever I want, but I'll call it weight, just because that'll be simpler to remember. Int height, int age. Now this is what trips students up sometimes. When I call the function, I'm just passing the variable names, the variables that are defined up here, right? They're already defined, so I'm not going to write int weight, int height. That would be creating variables. I just want to pass a copy of what is in these variables. But that copy has to be stored somewhere. So that's why I'm creating variables down here. These are called arguments, and these are called parameters. Okay, so the arguments are the values you pass, and the parameters are the variables that you create to hold the arguments. And then I'll paste this. So I have to make a variable float calories, and I'll set it to 0, 0. So I'll calculate the calories, and then I'll return calories. So just a few other pieces of information. All of these variables are called local variables because they only belong in this function. Okay, these are all local variables, and local variables, right, functions don't know about each other's local variables. And so that's why if a function needs to know something, it will have to be passed as an argument. And those arguments are stored in the function's parameter variables right here. Okay, so the weight goes into weight, height goes into height, age goes into age. And then we have to do our function prototype. And then I can run this. 115, 64, 52, and it did calculate the correct value, and it returned it. It stored it into main's local variable calories, and then it printed out. So that is a function that takes information. So when we can write a function for this now, for our other output, and we can say print result. So this function will just print this message, and it needs to know about main's calories, right? So I'm going to have to pass a copy. Nothing will be returned from this function. This function will just do something and then it will end. So I'll make this function here. It'll be a void function. A copy of what's inside this variable will be passed to calories here, and then I will just print out this message. I can delete that. And then I need my function prototype. And I think I need to change that to an S. Print results. So let's run it one more time, make sure we didn't make any errors. And it prints correctly. So now we've abstracted all of the details out of our main function. So main reads like a story now. We have these variables. We print the welcome, we get the weight, the height, the age, we calculate the calories, and then we print the results. And then all of the details for doing that are stored in functions. And when we want to pass information back and forth, to pass information to a function, we have to pass arguments, and those values are stored in parameters, or the variables that we create as parameters. And then some functions return information, and we have to store that information somewhere. And some functions just do something and don't return information, and those are called void functions.